Welcome to the 5th video in our Cybersecurity Lab 2026 version. And in this video, what we're going to do is finish configuring pfSense. And we're going to do it using the web interface from the Windows 11 virtual machine that we created in the previous video. Okay, we're on our Windows 11 virtual machine. And what we can do now is open a browser. And we do not want to sync any data, so we want to start without the data. We don't want to bring over anything else. It's going to really try to get us to do it about 3 times. We just keep selecting no. So now we can start to use the browser. So we're going to go ahead and go to pfSense. So we're going to type in https:// to 10.0.1.1. Now remember, that is the IP address that we set up for our adapter for this network segment. So that's how we're going to connect to pfSense. Now you're going to get this error page. This is because pfSense uses a self-signed certificate, so it's considered not secure, but you can trust it. Go ahead and select Advanced and then continue to 10.0.1.1. And now you're able to access pfSense. So for pfSense, the default username is admin and the default password is pfSense, all lowercase, and then you can sign in. So here we are, we're accessing pfSense from our Windows 11 machine using the browser. So everything, if you're at this point, everything's working well. So we can go ahead and select next. And it's warning us that the password is insecure. Do we want to change the password as soon as possible? So we could either do that now. I'll go ahead and select it. We have admin, and then just give it a password that you can remember, and then confirm the password and select save. So now you've changed the password. So we'll go back to System and then Setup Wizard. And now we can select next. And it's going to run us through some of these steps. There's 9 steps that the wizard will do for us. And the first one's just talking about support. So we can select next on that. And now we want to name the host. So you can name it, just keep the name as pfSense, makes it easy. For the domain, let's call this ecore.local. And we'll get to that when we actually set up our Active Directory and our Windows domain. So we can just go ahead for now is override the DNS. So keep that selected and click next. Now it's asking for the time zone. I'm going to keep this at UTC for now, and I'll select next. Now you can set this to your specific time zone. There's a lot of advantages to setting things to UTC, especially if you're a multinational organization or you're geographically spread across multiple time zones. It's a lot easier to keep everything synced if everybody uses the same time zone. It's not required, but I'm going to go ahead and put UTC on mine. And at this point, we can scroll down to the bottom of this page and we can uncheck the block RFC 1918 private networks. Want to make sure that is not checked. And then we can select next. We don't want to make any changes here, but this is just the LAN IP address, which we're good. So we can select next. Now, if you didn't already set your password, you could reset your password now. If you did, you can skip it. And now we can click reload to basically put all these changes into place that we've just done. Now you've got this much done, we can select finish, and this will complete this initial configuration with the wizard. And we can just close these. So at this point, we have some of the basic configuration done, but now we can name our interfaces. So remember before, by default, we were given the WAN, LAN, and OPT1 as names. We can go ahead and keep the WAN as it is, but we can select LAN. And now this gives us the opportunity to change this network segment. So since in some of our scenarios we're using the eCore network as the LAN. So you can change this to eCore. And what that will do is anytime you're looking at the interface names, eCore will be the interface. As we scroll through, there's really nothing else that we want to change at this point. So we can select save and then apply the changes. And those have been applied. So now we can go back to interfaces. It's time to OPT1. And for the OPT network or our interface, we're going to call that the attack LAN because that is where our Kali virtual machine is going to be. And once again, we're going to keep everything else the same because we've already got that IP range at 10.0.3. So we just scroll down to the bottom, select save, and then apply those changes. Now, once those have been applied, what we can do is configure some of the services. And the first one we'll do is a DNS resolver. So we'll select DNS resolver. And we'll go down to DHCP registration. And we want to go ahead and select register DHCP leases in the DNS resolver and register DHCP static mappings to the DNS resolver. And then we want to scroll back up and look at advanced settings. And under the advanced settings, we want to make a couple changes. We want to go to the advanced resolver options. We want to make sure that prefetch support is selected and that the prefetch DNS key support is selected. We'll go ahead, we'll keep the hardened DNSSEC data as selected. And then we'll scroll down and select save. We want to go ahead and apply the changes again. And now once those have been applied, we can go to our networking tab, which is under systems, advanced, and then networking. So under this networking tab, what we want to do is to scroll down and enable the hardware checksum offloading. This is this check there. We select it, and then we can just scroll the rest of the way down and select save. So now it's basically telling us that this requires a system reboot. Do we want to reboot now? We will select OK. And this will be just a normal reboot. So we select submit. And we see it's going to reboot in a countdown at 90 seconds. So I will pause the video while it reboots. All right, so now it's rebooted. We need to log back in. And remember, now we need to use the new password that we assigned it in the previous step. And now we are logged back into the dashboard for pfSense. So the first thing we want to change now is we want to look at the status, and then we want to go to DHCP leases. So at this point, we have one lease, and that is the 10.0.11, and that is to our Windows 11 machine. So basically, we set up that IP range for DHCP leases from the .11 all the way to the .250. What we can also do, so basically what happens is anytime a machine is connected to that adapter, it will get an IP address within that range. But what I want to demonstrate now, what you can do is you can assign a static IP address so that every time this Windows machine starts and it's connected to that adapter, it will get the same IP address. Now, this is important for servers, which I talked about before, but just for demonstration purposes, we'll go ahead and give this Windows VM a static IP address as well. So to do that, we just move over to the right and select Add Static Mapping. That is the one that is not filled in. It's just a plus sign. If you want it, the one that is filled in is something different. So we're just going to use, once again, the white plus sign. We select that. What it's given us the opportunity to do now is to give it a static IP address, but it has to be within that IP address range of that /24 network. So we can give it 10.0.1.2. Remember, 1.1 is the adapter itself. So 1.2 will be our Windows 11 machine, and it automatically populates like the host name and that information. So what we can do now is just scroll down to the bottom, don't change anything else, and select Save. And like everything else we do in pfSense, after we make the changes, we have to apply those changes. Now, once they have been applied, what we'll do is go back to our Windows 11 machine and demonstrate that this worked. So, we're on our Windows 11 machine with the browser, so we're going to our command prompt. Now, as it is right now, if we ran ipconfig, we still have that IP address that we got leased originally, the 10.0.1.11. But what we're going to do is run a couple commands. And what those commands were first ipconfig release. That is letting that IP address go. And then we want to run ipconfig renew. So now we're getting, what we should get is that static IP address. So we released that lease of 10.0.1.11. And by renewing it, now we're getting that IP address automatically from pfSense, which we had configured to give us a static IP of 10.0.1.2. So what we've just demonstrated is we are able to assign static IP addresses, and it will automatically assign a static IP address to that virtual machine once it requests an IP address from it. So the next thing you want to do is go to Services and select DHCP server. Once you're there, you're going to do the same thing with both the eCore LAN and attack LAN, but go ahead. Initially, we'll do the eCore LAN. Just scroll down to server options to DNS servers, and you'll want to make sure that you type in 8.8.8 and right below that 1.1.1. Those are the DNS servers for, first it's Google, the 8.8.8, and the 1.1.1.1 is Cloudflare. So they're both dependable web-based DNS servers that you want our pfSense to use. So once you've done that, you'll select Save and then apply the changes. And then check under Attack LAN and do the same thing. You scroll down and you see it's already there. So then we're ready to move on to the next. Also, what we can do is we can create some aliases. So we're going to go over to our firewall, and then we're going to select aliases. So what these aliases are, we'll, instead of typing out like a long rule for the firewall, we can create an alias so it can just run the name of the alias instead of the entire rule. So the one we're going to create is going to be called RFC 1918. And remember what those are. Those are those private non-routable IP addresses. So we'll give it the name RFC 1918. Description are basically the private IPv4 addresses. And we'll do this for networks. So now we will go ahead and type in each of those IP ranges that are part of RFC 1918. So that starts out with the 10.0.0.0, which is a /8. And we want to add some more. So we'll go ahead and add 172.16.0.0, and that is a /32. Add another network, and that is the 169.254.0.0. That's a 16. Now that's the IP address that you will get if it fails to get an IP address from the DHCP server. And that particular IP range is a /16. We'll add another network, and this will be the 127.0.0.0. This would be a /8, and that's basically would be like your loopback address, the 127.0.0.1. It is non-routable. Also, and then the last we'll do is the 192.168.0.0, and that is a /24. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and select Save and then apply the changes. Now you'll see when we create some firewall rules how these aliases are used. So we'll jump right into creating a firewall rule. And we want to hit Add and then the down arrow. So remember in the lesson when we talked about firewalls, basically the rules are in order that they come to. So if the very top rule says accept anything, it doesn't matter if you're blocking the next rule blocks something. It's because the first rule already said accept anything, then it's going to be accepted. So where you put the rule in order makes a difference. So for this particular rule, I'm just going to add it below. And I want to pass, which means it is going to allow anything that's coming from eCore network, either IPv4 or IPv6, using any protocol, the interface is eCore. The source would be any eCore subnet. Destination would be any eCore address. We'll put a description that allows traffic to all devices on the eCore network. So basically, it will allow all the devices on the eCore network to talk to each other. You can apply that. And the next rule that we want to create, we'll put it at the bottom, will allow traffic to pass the eCore interface, both IPv4 and 6, any protocol. The source is going to be our eCore address, our eCore subnets. The destination will be our attack subnets. This will allow traffic to the attack LAN. So basically we're opening this up so when we do like C2 traffic, it's going to be able to traverse through this firewall from the eCore network to the attack LAN. Obviously in real life, we would not want that to happen. We would block that traffic. Let's go ahead, we'll apply those changes. Then we will select another rule at the bottom that will pass anything coming from the eCore from IPv4 using any protocol. Once again, the source will be the eCore subnets. And the destination will be address or alias. So this is where our aliases come in. And the alias that we want to select is the RFC 1918 alias that we created. And what we want to do is invert match. So what that means by invert match is if we just kept it as RFC 1918, the only traffic that would pass through the eCore subnets would be from those private IP addresses. But by inverting the match, it's allowing traffic from any IP address except those private IP addresses, which basically is the internet. So the description would be allows traffic to any non-private IP, and I'll just put in parentheses the internet. Once again, you see what this is doing is basically it's allowing machines on the eCore subnet to reach out to the internet. Now we want to save Apply those changes. And we'll do one more add at the bottom. And this one will block anything on the eCore network, IPv4 or 6 from any protocol. Coming from the source. eCore subnet. Any destination. This will block access to everything else. Now, the reason I'm saying everything else is because this rule is at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and save this. We'll apply the changes. So we allowed some of this traffic, but the very last thing, we're blocking everything else. So if there's not a rule specifically saying that it is allowed, then it's not allowed. So we really need to set this up on this eCore adapter, because the eCore adapter, which previously, remember before we changed the name, was a LAN adapter. The LAN adapter by default does not have the implicit deny rule. And what the implicit deny rule means is, unless if a rule has been explicitly allowed, then everything's going to be blocked. Now, the default for the OPT adapter that we're calling the attack LAN adapter does use the implicit deny. So unless if we create a rule that specifically allows it, everything else is going to be blocked on that adapter. Now, with the eCore or the LAN adapter, we do not, the implicit deny rule is not in effect. So typically what you do if a firewall does not have the implicit deny rule is your very last rule will just be block everything else. But the way pfSense is set up, you do not have to do that on the OPT adapter, but you do have to do it on the LAN adapter, because there is no implicit deny rule in the LAN adapter, because they don't want you to get locked out of your own system. So you can't get into it to change the configuration and add firewall rules. So we'll go ahead and move to the attack LAN now. And we'll select a rule. So right now there are no rules there. So we'll select the rule. We hit bottom, or at the bottom of the list, but it's the first rule in the list. And this is going to allow, going to pass across the attack LAN any protocol coming from the attack LAN subnets and going to the eCore subnets. So this allows traffic from attack LAN to eCore. So of course we couldn't do our attacks if we didn't have a rule like this in effect. Go ahead and select save and apply those changes. Now we want to create another rule. We'll go down. Now what I'm going to do here, what I did originally in the original lab, is we blocked everything to the internet. However, people were forgetting to go back and creating a rule that allowed access to the internet. So I'm just going to have this rule to allow access from the attack LAN, any protocol. Once again, coming from attack LAN subnets to, we're going to select address or alias and the RFC 1918, and then reverse this. What this is going to do is allow the attack LAN to go out and reach the internet, because remember, inverting 1918 is basically the only IP addresses left are IP addresses out to the internet. So this allows traffic to the internet from the attack LAN. We're going to apply those changes. And at this point, this is all the rules we're going to give it. And we can now go to diagnostics and select reboot. Normal reboot. Once again, it's going to count down from 90 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. But basically, this ends our configuration for the firewall. We didn't do a whole lot of firewall rules, but really this whole exercise is to demonstrate how the firewall rules work, and it will allow traffic from both the eCore and the LAN subnets to go out to the internet, as well as allow them to talk to each other. So as this counts down, I'll go ahead and end the video, but this completes this. In the next video, we will create the Kali Linux VM, and it will be in that attack LAN, and we'll demonstrate how these firewall rules are working.